right now. So let me get back to share screen, and I would like to share, let's see, desktop 2, here we are. Share, we'll share this one. There, is that good? Can everyone see it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I did promise you 2 weeks ago that I would have the reference for, and with hands did we make the heavens. And that is found in 51, Surah 51, verse 47. However, if you get a translation from these fellows here, this outfit that we use, that's later than 1999, like 2001, 2003 or something, they have changed the words hands to and with power did we create the heavens. The only thing I can think of is they didn't know what hands meant. And so they changed it. And this is yet another example of the people of the book, whatever book you have, not quite knowing what the Holy Manifestation has revealed, because they aren't following what was revealed after that Holy Manifestation, who himself explains what the Holy Manifestation before had revealed. For instance, it was Christ that told the people much about what they were supposed to be believing with Moses. And Muhammad explained, as we've seen already, and as we shall see as we go through this, Muhammad explained even more and more about what do you think you were given by God before? What do you think this all amounts to? And sometimes, when we read some of these words, we think to ourselves, why didn't I think of that? But we didn't. And because we were screened from it until the Holy Manifestation opened our eyes. And so that's how it was possible to find this and know what the meaning, or one of the meanings, could be. All right, let's go to Surah 10, Yunus, or Jonah. And you can all see it, correct?
Yes.
So let me move over here. And let me just do this. So before we get to 2, let's look at 1, Alif Lam Ra. Alif Lam Ra. These letters are revealed 2,489 times. They're used 2,489 times in this surah. And guess what? That is 131 times 19. Keep coming back to that. However, as you can read also in brackets, these are one of the miracles of the Quran, and none but God alone knows their meanings. Not anymore. So now we get to 2. This is very important. I'm right here. Let me get to that. Oops, didn't want to do that. Okay. Is it a wonder for mankind that we have sent our revelation to a man from among themselves, saying, warn mankind and give good news to those who believe, that they shall have with their Lord the rewards of their good deeds? The disbelievers say, this is indeed an evident sorcerer, magic, in other words. What's going on here? Well, we have sort of the same problem today. I never thought I would see it, but we had it today. We have it today. When I was a kid, persons might say something like, I don't know much about science, so I have no way of judging whether this scientist is telling the truth or not. Now we just have persons, even some of our political leaders, who say, I don't believe in science. I don't follow it. I don't care about it. And even though God says, with truth did we reveal all things. So if you're not following the truth, then you're not going to get things revealed to you. You're going to be following hogwash. So we have here this saying, is it what he's saying is pure logic. He's saying to them, this is what bothers them, that a person from among their own selves, from among their own tribe, an Arab from the Qurayshi people in Mecca, would have been chosen to reveal something. But God does whatsoever he wants and ordains whatsoever he pleases. And we could apply exactly the same words today, couldn't we? Is it any wonder for mankind that we have sent our revelation to a man from among themselves, that is, from among the Iranians? And they just say this is evident magic because they are blown over by the force of logic. This is something new to them. And we also read, when we read, for instance, the history in the Bible, or the history in the Dawn Breakers, the history of the coming of the Bab and Balwan, we see this over and over again, even though the speaker has proven to the listeners the logic and the rational analysis of what is being discussed. That just makes them more angry. And in fact, there was a great movement about in the 13th century in Asia between, or there was a great debate between persons who said, we must follow what logic is taught to us by the Holy Quran, and others who said, no, logic doesn't matter and it should be thrown out. And we should just follow literally what is said in the book. That is, we have the book and we're okay with the book. So that was a great debate. It still has not been settled. There are about 14 different schools of Islam. And I asked my Islamic teacher friend, which one would I belong to? And he said, you'd belong to the rational set. And I think that would apply to every Baha'i. We'd belong to the rational set. It doesn't make sense, then we must have gotten it wrong somehow. There's something we're missing. All right. So let's move on to 3. Surely your Lord is God who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and then rose over, and then they have the word istawa, the throne, disposing the affair of all things. He rose over the throne, he rose over all things in his throne, disposing of the affair of all things. Yeah, we can understand that. No intercessor except by his leave. In other words, there's no one that can speak to God without God's permission. We cannot approach him without his allowing it. That is God, your Lord. So worship him alone. Then will you not remember? Will you not pay heed? Will you not pay attention? Okay. Whereas we like to say today, you understand what I'm saying to you? Okay. Then after this, we're going to jump to 6. Verily, oh yes, it was made in 6 days. What do we know about the 6 days? Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Christ, Muhammad. 6 days are revelations from God, whereas a revelation is considered a day. And that is how we can construct the meaning that is given to us. In a day shall be 1,000 years of your accounting, because the dispensations last approximately 1,000 years until they are subsumed or overtaken by a new revelation, which explains even more of what it was. That's why Muhammad was the seal. Of course, he is the seal of everything gone before and the initiator of everything to come after. Every manifestation of God is, just as every teacher in a classroom is. Same thing. So 6, verily in the alternation of night and the day, and in all that God has created in the heavens and the earth, are proofs and evidences, signs for those people who keep their duty to God and fear him much. What do we know about the alternation of night and day? The day comes, and it is because the sun is in the sky. The day of the knowledge of God comes because the sun of the revelation of God is in the sky above the horizon, or the sun of the manifestation above the horizon of the revelation. There's so many different ways of looking at this, but they all come together. They are all manifestly unified in the same kind of meaning. And what about the night? Well, the night is when the manifestation of God is not with us. He's passed on. So how do we guide ourselves in the night? What if you were a nomad and you were in the desert and you had only your camel and yourself and some water? How would you guide yourself to the next oasis? Because if you make a mistake, you're going to die of thirst, hot burning thirst. There's no question about it. You must be on the right path. So how would you do it? What would you use? Well, the moon, for one thing, that could light your way to a large extent. And that's why the moon is sometimes referred to as the book of God. What else? What do navigators use the stars for? They use the stars for navigation, and those stars in heaven navigate them so that they know exactly where they're supposed to go, whether they're on the ocean or they're in the desert of sand or a desert of salt water. Yes, and what about these stars? Stars are holy people, holy persons, saints, wise persons who believe in the manifestation of God. And where do they shine? In the heavens of the knowledge of God. So if we follow them, if we follow in their pathway, the true believers, we won't go wrong. Obviously, if we follow a false star, a star that is not actually of the constellations, then we'll be led astray and we'll die of thirst. Okay, makes sense? I probably beat it to death, didn't I? All right. So let's go from here to 13. Let's jump ahead here to 13. And indeed, we destroyed generations before you when they did wrong. Well, their messengers came to them with clear proofs, but they were not such as to believe. Thus do we requite a people who are disbelievers, polytheists, sinners, criminals. When they did wrong, we destroyed them. Destroyed them how? Well, first spiritually. And what happens after you've been destroyed spiritually? Consider the past of our own country, for instance. Right now, we're going through terrible difficulties. But at different times in our history, we were united, or mostly united, as one people doing one thing behind one solid cause. And nothing could stop us. For example, uniting to fight World War II. We fought 2 wars, a European war and a Pacific war. And that was something that hadn't been done before. We were the arsenal of democracy. That's what we were called. So there are times when we are spiritually so united, and then we get together and the material things follow. We then work in a material way. But what about if we're disunited? Well, we've gone through this before. What if our body is disunited? What do you call that? Sickness. And what happens if it doesn't become united again, balanced? Well, you don't get well. And if it's bad enough, you die. And that's what happens to societies too, exactly the same thing. And to economies, societies, lots of different things. And anything that's made of component parts, it must have unity. And so then, 16, we're going to jump to 74. But before I do, I'd like to talk about verse 9 for a minute. Verily, those who believe and do deeds of righteousness, their Lord will guide them through their faith. Under them will flow rivers in the gardens of delight, paradise. And this is, in a way, a prophecy of the coming of future prophets, future manifestations of God. That's how we will be guided, of course, to the bright day of the manifestation of God. Let's move on to before we get to 74. Now, 29 through 32, I just want to draw this to your attention. I'm not gonna read it because I don't want to take the time. But 29 to 32 is a perfect description of ideologies. And remember how we know what an ideology is. We know it by the way it works. We know that science is science because what is its object? Its objective is to inform, to instruct, and that's all. And you make up your own mind. It's just to inform you. And then there are other things too. What else does it believe? It believes that the means that you use for your research determine the end, the usefulness of that research. One of the things that scientists are always asked, whether social or physical scientists, is let me see your data. This has to be replicable. In other words, you did the experiment and you use this data. Let me use this data and experiment on it in the same way you did and see if I come up with the same results. And if I don't, either I'm wrong or you're wrong, but we can't both be right because we have different results, divergent results. That's how we discover, defrock and throw out frauds in science. And that also works with religion. The purpose of religion is to instruct, to inform. Its goal is that. Its goal is not to grasp power. It believes also that the means determine the end. By spiritual means, spiritual ends are achieved. Then there's one other thing, and I always forget what it is. I'll think of it later. Maybe you can remind me. So that's a description of ideologies. If you want even a better description, I have packed the book. I'm moving out of this condo in a few weeks. And so beside me, shoulder high is all my books, except for ones that I need for praying and meditation and for doing this class. But if you go to the Brothers Karamazov, the chapter on Ivan, you will come to one called the Grand Inquisitor. If you read that chapter, you will discover exactly all the moving parts to what an ideology does, and you'll see it. You go, wow, this is such an eye-opener. I see this all around me in modern day society. Okay, all right. Then just touching on one thing, 47, before we get to 74, I'd hit 47. For every nation, there is a messenger. When their messenger comes, the matter is judged between them with justice, and they will not be wrong. What is being judged? Whether they follow the previous messenger or not, whether they are sincere in faith. When I give my economics classes an exam, what do? I change a few things on it. I change the facts. I give them the same situation, but I change the fact. Instead of during the planting period, I may say during the pre-planting period. Then what would you do? So they'd have to figure that out. And it'd be a little different, but it would use the same principles. God does the same thing with us. Do you truly believe in Christ? Prove it. Show me that you truly believe in God through Christ, or do you believe in Christ through God? Are you just worshiping names? What if he comes by a different name? You reject him? All right. Now we go. Quickly to we go through. It states in 55 that all that is in the heavens and all that is on the earth belongs to God, which means not just heavens of the knowledge of God and the earth of our heart to understand, our capacity to understand spiritual things, but everything. So what are we? Are we freeholders or leaseholders, using the European expressions? We're leaseholders. We just lease everything we have until death causes us to depart from it, our bodies, everything. So it's no good standing before the messengers of God and saying, look, I give you this, I'll give you that. If you'll just leave me alone and give me another chance and let me retrace my steps and go back and try again, I'll do right this time. Two things. One, he says, you don't have anything that you can give us that we don't already own. Two, if you did it again, you'd do the same thing again. That's been shown in the past. So now we move to 74. 74. And I got to move 74. Let's see here. Get down here as quickly so you can all see it. I wish to just advise you that it may be that next week or the week after, I won't have both screens handy in which to share the screen with you. We wish to share the screen because I might be moving. I might be in transit, so to speak. And so in that case, it's very important that if you haven't gotten the materials so far, try to get them or try to find someone whereby you can share them. This here is a PDF. I have it on PDF Reader Pro, and I'm just reading it right off the screen, as you can too. So you don't need to buy the book if you don't want to. I like the book because then I can underline things. I remember when I was underlining things to remember it and putting little stars and everything in pencil, in black pencil. Someone said, "Oh, you're marking up the Quran. I only do that with textbooks." Right. Then after him, 74 now. Then after him, we sent messengers to their people. They brought them clear proofs, but they would not believe in what they had already rejected beforehand. Thus we seal the hearts of the transgressors, those who disbelieve in the oneness of God. What's that? What does that talk about? This is very challenging. If you turn to the notes for this page, and let me just get over here and click on it so you can see it. 74 right here. This states that the people denying Muhammad now, that is in the time of Muhammad, are the very same persons who denied the previous messenger. That would be Christ for the Jews, or it would be someone else in another land for followers of, say, the messengers of God in the Ganges River Valley, the Buddhas and Hindu, etc. Right? If you deny the previous messenger, the one to whose loyalty and whose worship they assiduously declare, what is it that the persons of the Quran declare? They declare, this book is of God, and we follow it, and we believe in this book. Therefore, we have not followed the wrong path. Everybody else has, but we have not, because we accept it. Yeah, that would be true if they accepted the teachings of what's in the book. But if that's not what they did, and I'm not suggesting anything one way or the other, Islam is, I believe, the second largest religion in the world after Christianity. So this happens to all past manifestations, and God forbid it should happen to Baha'is in about 1,000 years, but it likely will, because these patterns repeat themselves. So if Muhammad is the return of their messenger, so also are the people of denial and the people of faith the return of those same peoples of the past. So if Christ is the return of Moses, then the Christians are the return of the peoples of Moses who first believed in him. And they went up against their parents and their friends and society and everything to abide by the teachings of Moses, as we know. Great persecutions. So the same thing holds true over and over again with the coming of every manifestation of God. And we have this same thing. This is an essential teaching of the books of God and is dealt with in great detail in the Divine Kitab Yagan. I'm not going to give you the reference immediately unless I've written it down here, and I see that I have not. Let's see, 74, yeah. But it's been discussed, for example, in 75. Then after them we sent Musa and Aaron to Pharaoh and his chiefs with our proofs. But they behaved arrogantly and were of the disbelievers, of the disbelieving folk. It was the same kind of thing. All right. All right, then we look at 76 right here. So when came to them the truth from us, they said, this is indeed clear magic. Again, that's the same point, that they were so blown away. Remember now, this is a pre-scientific community, and a community that believed in superstitions and traditions as the foundations of truth. If it's been around a long time and we know powerful people who believe in it, and it's considered a tradition, we've always done it that way. Why do you do it that way? Oh, we've always done it that way. Okay, how long have you done it that way? All right. Then you're talking to a pre-scientific community, a cohort. So when they see and hear science for the first time, it blows their mind. And how do we know that the manifestations of God teach in a scientific way, using the scientific method? That is, a hypothesis, first an assertion, followed by a hypothesis, followed by evidence, followed by a summary. How do we know that? Well, because after the coming of every manifestation of God, within 100 to 300 years, a little more, a little less, there is a vast outpouring of science, because the old rules have been torn down, the walling off of separate parts of science that really belong together and were of the same study, that's all been blown away. And now there's a great sense of unity and of discovery. And that's one of the, again, that's a major feature of the maturation of every world religion as we see all around us. Then we have, let's go to 82. And God will establish and make apparent the truth by his words, however much they may hate it. This is actually something that we can read in the Baha'i writings, but it's translated by the Shoghi Effendi much more beautifully than that. Instead of saying it this way, he translates this as, fain would they put out God's word with their mouths, but God hath willed to perfect his light, God's light with their mouths, but God hath willed to perfect his light, albeit the infidels abhor it. What is light? Light is truth, of course. Light is knowledge, light is truth. So, and God will establish and make apparent the truth, however much the mujrimeen, etc., mujrimeen may hate it. Fain would they, there's an interesting story about this. I'll just take a minute about it. It has to do with something that was seen on YouTube, pictures from a taxi in Iran and in Tehran. And what was being shown, what was just briefly shown, because they didn't want to spend much time on it because it might have drawn suspicion onto themselves, was the new Grand Mosque that's being built on the very site and on the very foundation of the House of the Bab, which, as you know, was torn down after the revolution in '79. And what do you suppose they've written over it? What's along the first thing, one of the big arches? Fain would they put out God's light with their mouths. But God hath willed to perfect his light, albeit the infidels abhor it. Isn't that strange how things work out? All right, I hope I haven't strayed too far or taken too many chances with discussing this the way I have. I don't mean to be flippant about it at all, nor to cast dispersions on anyone. 96 and 97. Let's look at 96 and 97. Okay. Truly, those against whom the word of your Lord hath been justified will not believe. Even if every sign should come to them until they see the painful torment. Even if every sign should come to them. There's another place in the Quran, I can't tell you exactly where it is, but it's referenced in the Kitab Yagan, where Muhammad is told by God, and even were you to show them a book sent down from heaven and they could touch it with their hands, they wouldn't believe in you. And the same thing was said to Baha'u'llah, by the way. He said there were things I would love to reveal to the world, for instance, a common language and common script, but things have gone too far now. I have been accused of magic and sorcery. Therefore, I can't dare show any of these things, because if I do, they will say, aha, more sorcery from this so-called manifestation of God, etc. So he wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able, and nor was Muhammad many times because of this situation. And what is meant by those against whom the word of your Lord hath been justified? Against whom the word has been justified. That is to say, God said of them something, whatever it happened to be, and it was true, and therefore he was justified in saying it, because he found them in a certain way, and he told them what way that was, and they denied it, but it was justified against them. It was proven to be true against them. 99. And had your Lord willed, those on earth would have believed, all of them together. So will you try to compel mankind until they become believers? So will you, O Muhammad, then compel mankind until they become believers? In other words, they're not going to become believers. Some persons will never believe, and there's nothing that manifestation of God can do about it. Isn't it true that some of Baha'u'llah's own family rejected him? And the same was true with the family of Abdul Baha and the relatives of Shoghi Effendi. Even though they were next to him, what did Christ say about this situation? A prophet is accepted, saved by his own people and in his own home. Isn't that right? So then, 99. Those on earth all would have believed together. So why is it that some persons are veiled from it? If you go into to read among the doctors of religion, of Islamic religion, and you read what they have to say about the requirements of a person who presumes to call himself a scholar of Islam, you will read that he must now be very familiar with all the important texts, chronicles, dissertations, and theses that have been written previously in days past and in ages past concerning what was revealed by the manifestation of God. The person must also, they usually say he must also be completely fluent with modern Arabic and with classical Arabic, which of course takes many years of study because it's one of the most difficult languages in the world to really get into. And there are a couple of other things that are mentioned. Must follow all the laws. He must follow what is called the Sunnah, the group of laws that have been determined to be laws of God by who? The scholars that went before. Nothing is said in that group of things that must be that are required. Nothing is said about being detached from all the things of this earth, so that neither love nor hate will cause you to stray from the true path of God. You must so dissociate yourself from all the things, whatever you've heard, whatever you've seen and witnessed, and then begin your search. And you must do certain things of the highly spiritual nature to build selflessness, etc., until you reach a point, according to what is said in the 7 valleys, of true poverty and absolute nothingness. Then, and only then, can you be called a true seeker, according to what His Holiness Baha'u'llah said. None of that is spoken about by the previous religions. The previous religions say you must study long and hard the things that we have said. In other words, it's a guild, G-U-I-L-D. You must do and recite all the things that we do, and then we'll say you're one of us. Then we'll give you great power. Okay. 100. It is not for any person to believe except by leave of God. And He will put the wrath of His wrath on those who are heedless. Yes. God determines who will believe and who will not believe. And what determines this? We read in the Quran and in other places as well, and for instance, in the New Testament, where the manifestation of God tells us that by what our hands send forth, by our deeds, will God show us the way. If we do good deeds sincerely and do them for the sake of God and not for any private or selfish motive, as Baha'u'llah has said, a curse be upon those persons who seek from God anything but His own presence. If we do all those things sincerely, then God will guide us to Himself. Just as Christ said to a believer who asked Him, except thou be born again, thou cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Who was that, Nicodemus? I always tail off. Then we have 99, 100, 108. I'm going to finish with 108, then we'll move on to Hud. Yes, 108. Well, let's hit 107 too. 107. And, sorry, let me roll that over for you. And if God touches you with harm, there is none who can remove it but God, but He. And if He intends any good for you, there is none who can repel His favor, which causes it to reach whomsoever of His slaves He wills. And He is the oft-forgiving, the most merciful. So if harm is intended for you, there's nothing in the world but God Himself who can take it away. And if good things are intended for you, the same is true. And I think I just read one of the readings. I'm on one of these email lists where I get readings. It said that you're in the situation you're in because God has put you there for the purpose of the soul, of the maturation of your soul. As He said, nothing can befall my servants except what profits them. So that's how I understand that at any rate. And then 108. Oh, you mankind, oh, you mankind. Now the truth has come to you from your Lord. So whoever receives guidance, he does so for the good of his own self. And whosoever goes astray, he does so of his own loss. And I am not set over you as a disposer of the affairs to oblige you for guidance. In other words, it's up to you. This is the test of whether it's scientific or whether it's an ideology. The test is believe it if you want to, or walk away from it. The choice is completely yours. Christ said, he who hath an ear, let him hear. And if you don't have an ear, if you don't have a spiritual ear, then walk away, leave us alone. We don't ask anything of you. Now, sort of Hud. And why is Hud important? Hud is mentioned, so I don't know if it's Hud or Hud, but I've been saying Hud for most of the time I've seen it before. And when I was in the Arab countries, I said Hud and nobody corrected me. So I hope I'm right. Hud, Surah of Hud. This is referenced in the Kitab Yagan, the Book of Certitude by Baha'u'llah, as a book that shows that gives the complete evidence and story of progressive revelation, what it is and how it has come to mankind. It's the story of progressive revelation. So we see how one messenger has followed another, etc. And this is to teach us that, of course, after His Holiness Muhammad, another messenger will come. That he's not the end. as many of the religious leaders believe and preach, but he's the seal. And we know what you do with the seal. When you buy new olive oil from the store, it's got a seal on it. And what do you do so you can use it? You break the seal. You can't use it unless you break the seal. So until the seal on the kitab, on the Holy Quran is broken, okay, like that. So here we have book of verses. Alif Lam Ra. How many times is this used? 2,489 times, which is 131 times 19. Here's that code of 19. It goes all through the book, so that it goes down to the very letters of the words and the very words in the very Arabic words in the verses, so it can be checked. These letters, da, da, da. A book, the verses whereof are perfected and then explained in detail from one who is all wise and well acquainted. That is the manifestation of God. And who is more knowledgeable than the manifestation of God? So then we have, let's move to 7. And he it is who has created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. And his throne was on the water. His throne was on the water. Do you imagine a physical throne standing on the water? Well, that doesn't happen. What is the throne? The throne of his authority, the throne of his authority, the throne of his command, the throne of the command of God, etc., was on the water. What do we know water as referencing or as standing for when we read the holy words of God? And I got to take some tea or I'm going to choke. That's the water of the Spirit, isn't it? The water of life. The water of life is the life of the Spirit. So water is the water of the Spirit. And so the throne of God's authority stood upon the water that is the water of the Spirit. That's one way, the most obvious way, the most evident way that we can interpret this verse. Now we know something else, just at the same time. We know the story of Christ Jesus walking upon the water, don't we? He walked upon the water. What's more important? That a man living 2,000 years ago walked upon the water. Did you see it? Were you there? Let's imagine that you were there and you saw this guy walks on water. Check it out. Then what? Then what? He walks on water. More meaning, of course, is that the teachings of Christ Jesus, as given to him by God, subdued the waters of the Spirit, which were all choppy and going like this, and they became peaceful, placid. That is to say, he solved the problems that were in the uppermost mind of the people who were seeking the spiritual way. Oh, theres lots of different ways you can look at that. All of them make pretty good sense when you think about it. What are we doing for time? Okay, I still got time. Next. Okay, 7. And then he says here, going back to this verse 7, that he may try you, which of you is best in deeds. That's quoted also by Baha'u'llah in the Quran, in the Kitab Quran. But if you were to say to them, you shall indeed be raised up after death, those who disbelieve would be sure to say, this is nothing but evident magic. There it is again. This is nothing but evident magic. Do you mean to tell me that after my bones are dust, I'm going to be raised up from I'm going to come out of my graves? There are Christians who believe these things too, a literal fulfillment of the verse that they will come out of their graves. My goodness. I suspect that in the history of mankind, there isn't 1 square meter of soil on which someone hasn't bled his life's blood out. Just a speculation. Well, I think that might be close to the truth. So how many graves are there? I went to a funeral one time. I went before I went back to school and became and studied economics. Uh, I sold insurance for a while, and I sold life insurance. And I sold life insurance to this one guy who followed a certain Christian belief that believed in you're going to lay down in the cold, cold ground until Christ comes and brings you out of it. Well, he died a month later. I had to work very hard to give him this thing, and because he had a heart problem, and I had to rate him, and he didn't like the fact that he had to pay more money than everybody else. But I finally got it for him. In 1 month, he was dead. And naturally, I went to the funeral. And when I went there, I listened to the priest or their leader saying how terrible it is that he's laying in the ground, the cold, cold ground, with no air, with no comfort, that he's freezing in there, that he's suffering and suffering until Christ comes along and pulls him out of this earthen grave. Jeez, I thought that was so incredibly rough on the widow, et cetera, and the family who were there. It was none of my business, I suppose. Then, after that, if you go to yes, 7. If you want to know where the verse 7 is discussed in the Kitab Yagan, it is on page 15, or for those with a later edition, paragraph 121. For those that don't have the numbered paragraphs, it's on page 115. And for those who do, it's paragraph 121. And that's where Baha'u'llah discusses this. You shall indeed be raised up after death, etc. He discusses this thing that I've just referenced here. All right. 15 and 16. 15 and 16. Whosoever desires the life of the world and its glitter, its glam, we'll give it to him. We shall pay in full the wages of their deeds therein, and they will suffer no diminution in it. If you really want these things of the world, no problem, we'll give them to you. However, they are those for whom there is nothing in the hereafter but fire, and vain are the deeds they did therein, and of no effect is that which they used to do. That is to say, their deeds were for the things of this world, and they ended with the end of this world for them. And the fire is not necessarily torture, inasmuch as what do you do with a tree that bears no fruit? What other use do you put to? Is it put to? Yes, firewood. And so it's burned up and becomes nothing, just ashes. Let's see. 19 and 20. Now, again, let me remind you all that this is a very subjective choice of verses. It's one that I chose for a longer series, one that hit every single surah and every single verse that we did here in the city of New York. It was taught over a period of 4 years. This, of course, is much less. And so I had to pare it down, as would anyone. And so when you read it, you will no doubt find things that for you make greater significance that I haven't mentioned at all, or that no one else has mentioned to you. That's the way the holy books work. They are the books of life. So if you desire the things of this world, no problem, we'll give them to you. And then we have 19 and 20. Those who hinder others from the path of God, and here they use the brand name, Islamic monotheism. Of course, we mean the path of God in a general sense. Remember, the manifestations of God invited all mankind, not just those who believed in a certain way. Isn't that what Christ said? He said, I came to seek those who have gone astray. You Jews that sit in the high places in the temple. Have you gone astray? Well, no, you don't think so. So then I didn't come to save you all. I came to save those who wanted to be saved. Those who hinder others and seek a crookedness in the path of God, and seek a crookedness while they are disbelievers in the hereafter. That is, they themselves don't believe truly in the hereafter. And many religious leaders do not. They know, or at least they think they know, this whole thing is a hoax. It's okay because it leads people to do good things, and they may give me lots of donations. But no, I don't believe in it really. It's true. Some are like that. Some are like that. We may have met some even in our own lives, sadly enough. If you think to yourself how the messengers of God and their followers could have suffered such harm, such torture, such butchery and brutality at the hands of the people, initiated, actuated by the holy leaders of their faith, then you have to ask yourself, do they really think that this person is not of God? And if they think that, what are they doing? Well, they're trying to maintain their power by killing him and disbelieving in him and causing the people to do the same thing. He's saying right here, the persons who do this are blameworthy. Those who hinder others from the path of God and seek a crookedness therein, you can only do it through me. You can only do it through me. I shall tell you whether you're a believer or not, etc., etc. By no means will they escape on earth, nor have they protectors besides God. Their torment will be doubled. They could not bear to hear the preachers of truth, and they used not to see. So there were holy men and religious leaders that refused to listen to what the manifestation of God was saying because of their severe aversion, in spite of the fact that they had the sense of hearing and sight. They had physical sense of hearing, but they did not have the ear that Christ was talking about. This is really powerful stuff. Let's look at 21 and 22. Oh, sorry. We just have to do, no, that's not it either. No, that didn't do it. Here we go. They are those who have lost their own selves, and their invented false deities will vanish with them. What do we call in the modern, in the modern sense, false deities? Ideologies. And they work the same way, and they stand for the same thing. Ideologies, which believe the end justifies the means, not that the means determine the end, and that their object is not to inform, but to seize and hold power, to have power over the people. And thirdly, they do not allow questions of their beliefs. You're not allowed to ask questions and say, well, what about this? What about that? That doesn't seem to make sense. It's inconsistent with your findings or with your assertions. Then you don't believe it. That's all. Get away from us. Okay. Certainly there are those who will be the greatest losers in the hereafter. Why is that? Well, because they believed in false things. It's like a person who tries to build a house but doesn't believe in arithmetic. Well, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 feet. It equals whatever I say it equals today or tomorrow or some of this. So build a house that way. Go ahead. You go ahead. We'll watch and wait. So that's how that works out. It works the same with religion as with science, because these manifestations of God are, I assert that they are the most scientific persons that ever walked the face of the earth. They it is who teach and taught us science, the scientific way of thinking. We found logic in their teachings. And we use this logic not just on the spiritual world, but then we applied it to the material world. And we discovered that we could invent things and that those things were useful to us. Science and engineering. What comes after after this, 27. The chiefs who disbelieved among his people said, "We see in you but a man like ourselves, nor do we see any that follow you but the meanest among us, and they who are without thinking," as it's translated for the Kitab Yagan, "who are of hasty judgment. And we do not see in you any merit above us. In fact, we deem you liars. We think you're liars. You look just like us. In fact, you look a lot worse than us." Pharaoh, as described in the Quran, in I think the book of Hud here or in other chapters, when Moses was standing next to him, and of course Aaron had to translate for him because Moses had a speech impediment and no one but his brother could understand him. Well, Pharaoh could understand him, I suspect, because they grew up together as sort of stepbrother, as we know. So what did, after Moses said some things, like what my God is, and you can't see my God, and he's the God that created all things. What did Pharaoh do? He turned around and faced the people, held up his arms. He said, "See you not my gold rings and my fine clothes and the crown I wear? Do you believe him, or are you going to believe him? This guy dressed in shepherd's clothing, he can't even speak right. Or are you going to believe me? We've done pretty well together, haven't we? Haven't I made a good life for you? And now here comes this guy who are you going to believe?" See, it was a great stumbling block for the people. Just imagine going like this and this from head to head. How could they believe in Moses? Those who had the spiritual eyes could believe in him. They knew that what he was saying was the truth. As it says in the Quran, and we will come upon this verse, I can't give it to you exactly where it is right now, as it says in the Quran, "And a man in the family of Pharaoh said to them, will you slay a man because he says, my Lord is God, when he has already come to you with proofs and evidences from his Lord? If he be a liar, upon him will be his lie. But if he's telling the truth, at least part of what he says will fall upon you. God doesn't guide a liar or a transgressor." That's logic. They didn't like those words either, and they killed that guy. They killed him. How are we fixed for time here? I shall open it now. We have about 10 minutes left. Is that correct? I'll open it now to questions. So if you'll all unmute yourselves, and let me see if I'm going to stop sharing now, just a minute. I got to get myself over to the other screen, which we do like this, and go down to here, stop share. All righty, there you all are. And so I'm going to see if I can see, here's the participants. There appear to be 15 of you. And if you would like to, if I see your hand or something, here's a hand over here. Derek, you want to unmute yourself, Derek?
Yeah, yes. My question is, you mentioned that there was a debate or conflict between the rationalists and the ideologists.
Yeah.
And could one say that one of the causes of the decline of the golden age of Islam was that the ideologists prevailed?
I think so. And that's what Mirza Abu Fazl says too, that they turned inward. They became mostly, they cut themselves off from the world. Before that time, science and religion moved together, and each one supported the other in their beliefs, in its individual beliefs. But after a time, they didn't want to go as far as science was able to go, and the literalists came in, and of course, literalism is an interpretation, and so they began to turn inward. You and your way, me and mine, would say. Yes, you're right. Mm-hmm. And who else? Let's see. Do we have everyone on the screen here? Someone can help me out. If you have your hand up or something and I don't see your hand, please advise me. I see that there are 15 participants, so everyone is here.
Yeah,
Derek, you have another question?
Yeah, I have another question.
Right,
Well,
just
not
a
so
minute.
much
I want to make
question.
sure, just a minute. I want to make sure that no one else has raised their hand.
Yeah, that's
Raised their
fine.
hand in the meantime, and I am not aware of anyone. So go ahead, Derek.
You had mentioned about when you about writing in the Quran and you were kind of, you know, I guess somebody said something about the fact that you wrote in the Quran and I was just wondering, is that because you know, and almost all the religions, the holy book is considered, you know, you're supposed to treat the holy book, whatever religion, with reverence. You know, you're supposed to
Yes,
you know,
yes, yes,
not write in it and keep it in its own place.
yes,
And
exactly. I got a couple of fancy Qurans, okay? I don't mark them up. But this is a using Quran. It's small and light, and I take it with me, and so I can read it when I have a few minutes. Yes, this one I mark up, and I mark it up because, for instance, there's no concordance in it. If you look at some of the Bibles that are written, they have what's called a concordance, which they will reference something, and in the middle column, it will say, you will also find this here or find this here. They're cross-referenced. But even then, I might underline it. Yeah, that's not what you want to keep holy. I'm not defacing it. I'm not doing something harmful to it. I'm just doing that so that I can understand it better and remember it better, because it is putting them to your heart and following the teachings that God wants from us. He's not going to ask us, well, you spent $56 for that book and I saw you underlined it. I'm not pleased with you about that. No, that's not going to be it. What is going to be it is you took these words and you wrote them on your heart and you followed them, and I am well pleased with you. That's what will be asked. Yes. Oh yeah. Since no other hands are up, let me continue the story a little bit. We were having a real difficulty with cheating in the Petroleum Institute where I taught in Abu Dhabi. There was cheating among the locals, of course. The school was filled with locals, with some Palestinians and others from Sudan and Tehran and a few other places. The cheating was going on and the person who was cheating said, my brother was just trying to help me. What's wrong with that? Well, of course, we can tell him that that's a fraud. You know, you're not, this is not who you actually are. You didn't know these answers, and so you're giving the wrong judgment about yourself. So then what I did was this. I brought a Quran with me to class, and I held it up and I said, see this? You recognize it? Good. You're going to put your test page under it, and then you're going to put the Quran back on it. That was the end of, there was no more cheating in the class. But some came and they used a pocket square, and they touch it this way so that they wouldn't touch it with their hands, showing just how holy they were, how pious they were around the Quran. It didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was they don't cheat, and the cheating stopped. The other teachers, of course, weren't necessarily following the Quran the way I did. I really did believe in it, and they knew that. One time I was in at my desk in my office, and a man brought some tea to me that I had ordered, and he was just about to put it down on the Quran, and I said, "Not there!" Wow! Before the day was out, everybody knew about that, and all my students started coming in saying, "Are you Muslim? Are you Muslim?" That's really something, isn't it?
Dalton, may I make a comment about the writing in the Quran?
Please.
Yeah, because I just found this and I thought this was really interesting. This is a post from Riyad Youssef, and he says, if there's any credible hadith that makes a statement about this, please reference it. He goes, we don't worship the Quran, nor can anything we do harm Allah nor his message. If writing in the Quran is prohibited or discouraged, the only harm is doing it to ourselves. Thirdly, Allah exalted the Quran, but Quran literally means recitation, which is how it was revealed and how many companions first memorized it. Muhammad couldn't, or even see, written it, nor understood the act of anyone else doing so because he was illiterate. So unless someone specifically asked, then there's no ruling that can be given. Ultimately, anything said regarding this is a guess at best, and Allah will judge us on our attentions alone. So if you're writing in the Quran to increase your knowledge, there shouldn't be an issue about it. I actually consider all the needless alternatives to be counterproductive to learning, as the notations are there for us to learn. I just thought that was interesting.
Thank you very much. That really adds to this discussion. Very much. And of course, I write down in many verses, just as you might imagine. For instance, Surah 11, Hud, verse 18, and I've written down on page 126 or paragraph 135, and then part of that also Iqan. So that's because Baha'u'llah is the one who opens these things up for us. The amazing thing is that we really have to follow that. It's only our own speculation. That's why I'm saying to you all, this is my subjective choice. I think these are the things that move me and